right, welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. Oregon coming off the bye week. Up next, a home matchup against Washington for Senior Day. The one thing Dan Lanning has yet to do in his career, knock off the Huskies. We'll explain why this is a must-win for Oregon. And then we'll also take a look at the rest of the Big Ten, some of the other chaos in the playoff as well, too. But let's introduce the other two members of our team, Aaron Fentress and, of course, Joey Harrington. Anthony Newman not with us as he prepares to, I think, win a 6th state championship when it comes to Oregon high school football. But first of all, gentlemen, did you enjoy the bye week? No Oregon football, and the Ducks essentially won the bye week because every other undefeated team in the nation lost for the first time this week.
It was horrible because I couldn't hate watch Oregon. Just kidding.
And Joey, I imagine just a lot of soccer throughout your weekend here?
I'm trying to even remember this weekend. Yeah, I was out at Delta Park a lot. You know, actually, you know what? Okay. I was reminded of Jameis Winston. We had that conversation with Jack as it's raining sideways, and it's like, do I really want to go play soccer? And I showed him the Jameis Winston clip where he says, I am so lucky that I get to play football in Cleveland, Ohio, in true football weather, here in front of these fans. It's like, yeah, I am so lucky I get to sit at Delta Park under my umbrella in my golf rain gear with my Pendleton blankets, freezing like.
Well, either way, for Oregon, it couldn't have gone better. You're clearly the number one team in the nation, the only team without a loss this season as Army and Indiana go down this week. And then some interesting results as well, too. Ole Miss loses. Alabama picks up a third loss as well. And now you're looking at this potential playoff. And listen, newsflash, everyone, we do this before the playoff rankings come out. I know that reveals all the magic of the show. But Aaron, I'm going to start with you. There are some conversations going on right now that a 3-loss SEC team deserves to be in the playoff. If you look at Alabama's resume, they have 2 losses to teams that are 6-5 this year. By the way, your thoughts on a 3-loss SEC team possibly sneaking into this playoff?
First of all, there was a great photo posted, I think, on the Ducks Twitter page or Blue Sky or somewhere of the Ducks sitting on a pier or something like that, looking out over the water with the sun. And it's just like this great weekend to just kick back and watch the chaos or something like that, right? And it was hilarious because that's exactly what happened. And what's funny, and this happens every year, and Joey and I talk about it every year, that people get all worked up about who should be in, talking about it week 6 on or what have you, how many SEC this and that, even when you only had 4 teams. Then you just wait till November comes around and then stuff happens. And a lot of stuff happens. As for Bama, 10-2 Bama to me, I think probably should get in. 9-3 Bama with a loss 24-3 at a 5-5 Oklahoma team. No, I'm out on Bama. They do not deserve to be in. That was a horrible look. Now, if you get to the end of the season when other stuff happens, and it's close between a Bama at 9-3 and they lost by a field goal and another team at 10-2 that played a garbage schedule, then you can probably talk to me. But now, no. Ole Miss, same thing, went and lost to what was a 5-5 Florida team. Those 2 teams to me are out. No 9-3 SEC team will deserve to be in this season or ever, maybe.
And to your point, obviously, as we said, this is before the weekly rankings, but there's still going to be a final rankings as we project here. And Joey, I think the interesting team that a lot of people circle is Indiana at this point. They wanted to know what they were made of. They lose handily against Ohio State, minus a couple of big plays, sure, but that strength of schedule for them is really weak. And my question to you is, they only have 1 game remaining before the potential playoff. If Indiana wins, and they're sitting there at 11-1 for the most part, do they get in with 1 loss against their only ranked opponent this season, which was a convincing loss to Ohio State, or should they be vaulted by a team with 2 quality losses that has better wins?
That's literally why I didn't jump in right after Fentress, because I was trying to think, like, okay, well, who's the team that takes that spot, right? And it's probably an 11-1 Indiana team. I'm just happy I'm not part of that committee right now, because we've talked for years about we need to expand the playoff, we need to expand, because you can't do it with 2 teams in the BCS. Well, then you can't do it with 4 teams in the original playoff, and now we're having, all it does is just shift the place that you're having the conversation. And what we've always said is, through the years, if you want to be in the top 4, then don't lose, right? Then win your way into it. Once you get to the place where you're having to discuss about whether a team with 3 losses deserves to be like, I'm sorry, like you get what you get. You get what you get. If you're in, 100%. Great. If you're out, then win. Like just win your games. So I would personally put Indiana in. But that's just probably me being anti-SEC biased. I will say, though, and to kind of backtrack a little bit, this is my favorite week of the year, not necessarily for the football game, but the Oregon Duck and his Harry the Husky hate posts. So just, keep an eye out for that and all the absolute, it is a treasure trove of insults directed at Harry the Husky.
Let me double back on this real quick. So we just left an era of a 4-team playoff where last year we saw the 2-time defending champion Georgia Bulldogs get left out with 1 loss. That to me was just horrible. Just a complete indictment of the system. But at least 4 was better than the BCS when you only had 2. That system screwed a certain 2001 Oregon Ducks team after Nebraska got boat raced by Colorado in the Big 12 championship, but still got into the national championship game. We go before that to where you didn't even have the BCS, where you had undefeated teams not play each other. I still want 1991 Miami, Washington. I still want that game. Dust off those guys, get them out there on a flag football field, and let's play it. But now we have 12 teams. I will never, ever at any point shed a tear for number 13. They can kick rocks because 13 was never even remotely in the discussion for 100 years. But now we're going to cry over 13? No. 12 is lucky to get in. 11 is lucky to get in. 13 kick rocks, 14 kick rocks. You don't matter. What we did though is we saved the situation where teams can go 12-1 and not get into the mix. That's gone. That's all that matters.
So, I was going to ask you guys, with this being our first year of the playoff, I love the fact that BYU Arizona State is must-watch TV at this point of the year. And so many more games matter, and it feels like you're watching the results of so many more games because just getting to that playoff is so prestigious and anything can happen at that point. What do you make after this first year, Joey, just from a fan perspective, the fact that there are so many games that have an impact on what we're going to see here in the next week and a half?
Come to me right after this. I got something for you.
Okay. I love, like you said, like BYU Arizona State is a game that you are paying attention to at the end of the year. There is another, I think, tangential conversation off of that I'm not sure this is the right time to have, but I'm going to bring it back to it. And it's what we all love about college basketball, right? You love having, okay, well, if this 10 seed beats the 7 and then they play this team and then it's fun, right? It's fun to involve. It's fun to think of the possibility of, a couple weeks ago, BYU making it back in and challenging that one time where they won a national championship, right? Like that is what college athletics is all about. And I'm not sure what the rest of the question was because I know that Fentress had something.
So listen,
real quick, Aaron.
This one thing that bugged me for decades was the argument that if you went to a playoff, you diluted the regular season because the games didn't mean as much. That was completely mathematically illogical because under that system, if you lost 1, a lot of times you were done. If you lost 2, you were absolutely done. So if you're done after 1 or 2 losses, that makes the rest of your games worthless. Therefore, you delete the importance of more games under that system. This system, now 1 pushes you to the brink, 2 pushes you, almost over the edge, 3 you're probably done. But it may dilute the individual loss, like Ohio State losing at Oregon didn't kill them. But you open up the door for so many more games that are going to matter down the stretch of the season. It just makes it infinitely more entertaining and exciting. So basically, a bunch of people who didn't know what the hell they were doing for almost a century look stupid right now.
And they
can always bash them because it was always dumb.
So here's
with that being said, we'll take a quick.
I'm just going to translate this entire segment before we go to commercial. Aaron says everybody else can kick rocks. There we go. Now let's go to break.
There we go. Summed it up. When we come back, we'll talk about the importance of this game against Washington, why it might be a must-win for Oregon as they close out the regular season. Stick around. Plenty more Talkin Ducks when we come back. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Oregon getting set to take on Washington at home. Dan Lanning is 0-3 in his career against the Washington Huskies. All 3 games have been one-score affairs. And now it looks like in this situation here, Aaron, Washington's not nearly as good as they were last year, the team that went undefeated and lost to Michigan in the national championship game. Oregon is arguably better than they were last year. Is this a must-win for the Ducks, and should they win this game without any doubt?
Can you hear my dog? Anyway, so must.
It's not a good sign if you got a dog chiming in right here.
Yeah, the dog's got an opinion. Must win implies to me that if they lose, they're in danger of not making the playoffs, which I think we're going to talk later. But aside from all that, I would say that given what has happened with Washington and Oregon under Lanning, absolutely. You cannot lose this game. You need to thump them. What's the line? Are they favored by 19? Is that what it is?
I think it was about 19.
19. You're favored by 19
we'll
this game
that.
At home. Washington's down. To me, Lanning's probably not as a vindictive a person as I am. I'm vindictive. I'm trying to drop 90, okay? But Lanning's going to be more measured and be smarter and just win the football game. But I think you definitely want to send a message, and you definitely want to crush them because of what they did to you the last 2 years. However, the difference is Kalen DeBoer isn't there. So that's the guy who beat you 3 times. Him and Penix, they're gone. So beating them is not really going to mean as much, given that you lost 3 times to DeBoer, who's gone, as it would if he was still there. But still, you've got to exercise that demon. You've got to crush Washington.
Is this one of those ones, Joey, where you showed the game film from when Washington came into Autzen and dropped 70 when the Ducks were wearing those goofy cow-colored uniforms, and you want to put a thumping on it to just make a note in this rivalry for what it means to close out your regular season with an emphatic win over the Huskies?
No, it's not.
That's why I would never coach right there.
Yeah, that if I'm coaching, I absolutely do not do that. Why? Because it brings in unnecessary emotional baggage, right? What is Oregon's job, Oregon's goal, Oregon's vision is so much further than a mid-level Washington team, right? The way that Oregon is playing, the fact that they are 19-point favorites, the fact that they're the only undefeated team in college football, the fact that they're the unanimous number 1 team in the country, if they play the way they're capable of, they should put a thumping on them. So I almost feel like changing the focus from what it is that you tactically need to do and bringing in that extra emotion is, I mean, I've been the, I would say beneficiary on the wrong side of being too emotional, right? I've as somebody who never threw a touchdown pass against Oregon State because I was so jacked up and it's like, all I want to do is just beat the Beavers. Like there is a flip side to that, right? So if I'm coaching, it is do your job. It is fix the things that were, that created the tight games the last 2 weeks, or the last 2 games, Maryland and Wisconsin, right? Those are the things that you need to figure out rather than getting extra emotional about playing Washington.
Now they will get Tez Johnson back in the lineup, it sounds like. How big of a boost is this, and do you keep him on somewhat of a pitch count for this game?
Well, it depends on how healthy he is. If he's 100%, you just roll with him and put him out there for the amount of reps he usually gets. I think it's huge. I think he's clearly their best receiver, the best all-around receiver. He makes that thing go in a lot of different ways. And it was clear that the offense didn't have the exact same pop without him. So getting him back is ginormous, and you definitely want to get him rolling in this game. You don't want to give him 15 reps. Again, if he's still a little injured, fine, keep his reps down. But you want to get him out there going because you got to get him ready for Ohio State.
Yeah, and Joey, you seem to think that he was really one of those missing pieces, especially against Wisconsin, just especially on 3rd down for the Ducks.
If he's back and he's healthy, he's going to be massive. Yeah, I think all of us underestimated the impact of not having Marcus Harper and not having Tez Johnson in that lineup would have on Oregon, because it's just next man up, right? Well, Oregon has had explosive down the field playmaking ability with Evan Stewart, with Trayshawn Holden, with Sadiq. They've still had that, but what they have been lacking is the consistency, is the longer drives, is the sustaining of drives, is like that's the stuff that takes you from 16 to 20 points to 35 to 40 points by being able to continue these drives. And that's what Tez was, or what Oregon was missing was when Tez was gone. It was the ability to move the chains. And yeah, if he's back, this is going to be huge.
Yeah, no official word from Lanning quite yet. Not really talking much about the injuries, but Tez did share on social media that he is back, and if Oregon can get him for the game against Washington, obviously it makes the case that much easier for them to get their first victory against the Huskies. All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this matchup with the Huskies, what the Ducks should prepare for, and what Oregon continues to refine as they get towards the end of their regular season. We'll be right back on Talkin Ducks. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. We continue to discuss the end of the regular season for the Ducks, an upcoming Big Ten championship game, and of course the college football playoff, 12 teams for the first time ever. Everybody's loving this. And Aaron, Oregon right now, the only undefeated team in the nation at 11-0. Have they locked up a playoff spot already at this point? I mean, even if they lose the next two games and finish 11-2, have they done enough this season to ensure that they get one of those playoff spots?
Wow. Okay. If they were to lose to Washington this week, they would probably drop 6 or 7 spots at least. I mean, I've seen some teams drop 5. I mean, Indiana dropped 5 in the AP poll after losing to arguably the better team on the road. They dropped 5 spots. They only have 1 loss, and that was their only loss. So they could easily drop to the bottom of the top 10. And then if you lose to Ohio State, which would be obviously a quality loss, let's assume it's a close game, do you then fall completely out of the top 12? It depends on what happens across the nation. I would say that I still would see them getting in, but don't dance with that because there could be a scenario where that Washington loss could hurt you so badly that not closing out as conference champions could drop you out of the top 12. It's possible.
What about the quality of wins, though, for Oregon? I want to get to you on an important point here in just a second, Joey, but I think Oregon's quality of wins, right? They're one of the few teams that have got 3 wins over ranked opponents this year. That win against Ohio State's arguably still one of the best wins in the country this year. The win against Boise gets better and better every week. You beat a ranked Illinois as well, too, versus any other team that might be sitting there with 2 losses.
Like I said, I don't think they would fall out of the top 12. I just wouldn't mess with that because you never know what else is going to happen. You never know what a committee is going to say. And like I said, we've seen some teams fall like rocks after losing a game, and Washington's not good. That would be a devastating loss. So I think they would still be in, but you could be in trouble if you mess with that formula. So just take care. Now, if they win this week, doesn't matter what happens with Ohio State.
Now, Joey, the value of a bye, how important is that? Because now you're looking at, you got to win 2 games to get to the title game versus winning 3 games.
Okay. Fentress just said it doesn't matter what happens after that. And I'm just throwing this out here. Okay?
Wait, not in terms of, I'm talking
No.
Hold on. Is that what you said against Oregon State?
In terms of getting in.
Hold on. So if you win the conference championship, number 1 seed, you end up playing what, like a number 8
or
Tennessee?
9, they're saying right now.
Like a Tennessee?
And a lot of polls have Tennessee, Georgia as 8 and 9. No,
okay.
Thank you.
And I'm just saying, just hang with me here. Let me finish, okay? Let's say you lose to Ohio State. You end up with the 5 seed. So you've got a home game against SMU, Arizona State,
Clemson,
Indiana, maybe? And then you win that, and so then you end up playing the 4 seed, Boise State, who you've already beat. I mean, I'm not saying you would ever want to lose a game. I'm simply saying it is interesting if you are to choose, or if you do go, which path you end up going down, they could be drastically different. If you said to me, hey, your path to the national championship game is you have to beat Ohio State, you have to beat Tennessee or Georgia, you have to win a semifinal game, and then you're in the championship, or you have to beat SMU at home, beat Boise in a bowl game, and then win 1 game against the power? I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying.
Okay, I hear what he's saying, but still, at the end of the day, for me, the fewer games, the better. Because we can sit here and say SMU and Boise, But hey, upsets happen, and you just open the door for something to happen. You also open the door for injuries, for fatigue, for so many things. So I totally see what you're saying. Like, whenever I look at the bracket and you look at it like that, you're like, that's not that bad of a path. Also, I kind of want to see a home playoff game at Austin. I think that would be pretty live.
Welcome back into Talkin Ducks. Joining us now is former Oregon tight end George Wrighster. And George, the coffee's kicking in for me, so let me get you caught up to speed on what we've talked about. The game against Washington, kind of a must-win, but you definitely got to take care of business against the Dogs. Oregon, we feel like, should have a playoff spot locked up, even if they lose the next 2 games, but you don't want to flirt with that, according to Aaron Fentress. He told me that same advice in college, too. Now, when you're getting set for this matchup here in just a little bit, we're kind of breaking down this college football playoff because while we enjoy the pageantry of a BYU and Arizona State and the drama that it has nationwide with that game, we don't love the fact that Oregon can have the number 1 seed. And a wise Joey Harrington brought this up. You're the number 1 seed. You get a bye, but then the winner of Tennessee and Georgia is looming there. Something's not right about this bracket. And Aaron pointed out the Boise States of the world mirroring the Gonzagas of the college basketball world, where they kind of play tough against 1 or 2 opponents and coast the rest of the way. Do you like the way the bracket is set up where, hey, top 5 conference champions, you're going to get those 4 bids, or do we need to change this up a little bit?
I love it. Stop crying and check ball. Stop crying and check ball. I mean, it's just like the NCAA tournament. Every single year, guys like Aaron, they come on here. Oh my God, this was such a hard bracket for them. This is the murderer's row. Dude, just line up and play ball.
You've never heard me say that. Stop don't put words in my mouth. I'm not against you on this. Keep going. We're probably on the same side.
Aaron, we haven't even talked about it, and I know that you're a crybaby about this.
Well, about what?
Guaranteed.
Okay, whatever. Go ahead.
You cannot worry about the seeding and where other people go and who's gonna play. If you're supposed to be that damn good, you're supposed to then beat whoever that shows up in front of you. I am not a believer in worrying about that, but I do love the fact that the conference champions do get the buys, though, because that eliminates a lot of this bias from different conferences, whether it's the SEC bias, Big Ten, that they're favored more than the ACC and the Big 12, and then the Group of 5. Everybody has a shot to get the buys, and I love that.
Okay, I'm jumping in here. Jordan. Okay, so here was the point that we were just talking about, George. One was just acknowledging that if you go out and win the conference championship for the Big Ten, that means you will have had to beat Ohio State. Your next game you will get, Georgia, Tennessee, and then you'll have the national semifinal, right, before getting there. If you lose, all we're saying is that the teams you would have to beat to get to the national championship would be SMU or maybe Indiana at home, and then you would get Boise likely, right? Who you've already beaten, and then you have one semifinal game. All we're saying is that it's interesting how the bracket is set up. Yes, you gotta play who you gotta play. But if I'm looking at that and say my choices are to beat Ohio State, beat Tennessee, and then the semifinal, or my choices are to beat SMU, Boise State, and then the semifinal. I'm taking option B. I'm just saying.
So, well, hold on. Because the Boise State game, yes, I 100% agree with you. You feel like because we've already seen that movie, Ducks didn't even play well, weren't, rolling at that point in time. We believe that we know how that movie will end. But the SMU game, like these Big 12 teams and ACC teams are just getting absolutely just downplayed. Oh, those are easy wins. How? Ole Miss lost to 3 teams that were unranked and either at 500 or below. You had Tennessee lost to Arkansas. And so there's no guaranteed, quote unquote, easy path except through Boise State, only because you know that you beat Boise State already and you believe that you can do it again. But these unknowns like SMU, like Miami, like whoever wins the Big 12, you think you would beat them, but how are they any different than what the and where the SEC is perceived to be so much stronger, because outside of Georgia, they've all lost to bad teams. I mean, and Texas hasn't played anybody yet.
Sure. But George,
that's the point.
All we're saying is that if you're looking at it, would you rather, if you had one choice, you would have to beat Ohio State on a neutral field, or you'd have to beat Arizona State or SMU at Autzen? Which one of those would you choose?
Check ball. Whoever lines up is getting it. Where I ain't got no belt around here. Whoever, line them up. Bring what they say. Bring your ass. It don't matter.
Aaron's apparently chewing on something right now. So, Aaron, what you got there?
Oh, I'm opening up a box of cards since they're talking so long. I thought I'd.
Well, I mean, here's the deal. As it stands right now, if it goes according to chalk, you're going to have either Arizona State, Iowa State, BYU, or Colorado, one of those four potentially representing the Big 12 champion, versus Boise State, the winner of that going to the national semifinal. That's how it stands right now with the way this bracket is set up, with 4 playing the winner of 5 and 12, if everything went according to chalk at this point. And to me, it's just, Aaron, I agree with you. There still needs to be some tinkering there to protect those teams a little bit more that have gotten the first or second seed for the most part. No different than how the NCAA tournament protects that number 1 overall seed by giving them the 16 seed that just played a play-in game to get there, and makes it that much more difficult for them, Aaron.
Yeah,
so first of all, he said Aaron.
He said Aaron. He said Aaron.
90% of the nonsense I deal with is misinformation. So let me correct George real quick. We are on the same side of this. I'm not. Let me finish. You weren't even here. I think Joey's wrong. I want to play fewer games. So I'm not going to try and play 4 to get there, because I think the first 2 might be easier than the first one I would play if I only had to play 3 to get there. Because at the end of the day, whoever you're hiding from, you're going to meet them anyway. You better just win, right? Just like you said, check up and ball out. So we're on the same side of that. My only real issue with everything is the fact that a Boise, and I miscounted the conferences before, my bad, but Boise could have a top 4 seed when they played in a completely inferior conference. I don't believe Boise wins in any of the top 4 conferences. I think if Boise plays in the Big 12, they don't win that conference. They don't survive that conference, and they don't do nearly what they did in their conference. So that's my problem with this whole thing. That needs to be fixed, because mid-majors should have no seat at the bye table.
Hey, so what, Aaron? Things have been mishandled for so long.
Right. It's so much better, right?
Hold on. Joey understands better than me, and Joey understands this better than anybody on here. Number 2 in the AP poll. Number 2 in the coaches poll. Then you get janked by the BCS. And it's happened to Auburn. It's happened to TCU and Baylor. It's happened to so many
Georgia
teams
last
that
year, right?
I don't care if Boise State ends up with a bye, if Georgia, and then the SEC people will be crying, oh, Georgia and Tennessee, they actually have to go on the road and play road games for like the first time ever. And dude, just if they're supposed to be so good, go win, and you'll prove to everybody that you're the greatest that ever lived. And you know what? This college football playoff, everybody said it's going to ruin the regular season. It has been significantly better. Who would have thought that SMU, Virginia would have any implications, or Colorado versus Kansas would have the same implication as Alabama versus, who did they just lose to? Alabama versus Oklahoma. It's better off. And yes, it's just like the NFL playoffs. Sometimes it's hard because a 7-9 team gets a home game. So what? Suck it up. Check ball.
All right. Well,
just so we're clear, I'm on the same page as you guys. I was simply just pointing out, like, isn't it interesting? That's all I'm saying. It's just interesting.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this Heisman Trophy race, get George's thought on it as well, too, as we continue along on Talkin Ducks. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. The Heisman Trophy race starting to come to a conclusion here soon. George, Travis Hunter had a remarkable game, but it was a loss to Kansas, and so now Colorado might be knocked out of the top 25. Dylan Gabriel still the best player, arguably on the best team in the country. And then, of course, Ashton Genty chasing history. How do you see this thing shaking out with one game left in the regular season?
Oh, I think that all the momentum is with Travis Hunter at this point in time. But the question is, should it be, right? Because in that Utah game, he got cooked on defense. He got absolutely cooked. And he's missed basically 2 games this year. So that has not historically been what the Heisman Trophy has been about. However, though, I will say that Ashton Jeanty has been phenomenal this year. And then when you look at the defenses that he's played against, how they have changed exactly what they do and are giving up big pass plays, everything just to try to stop him from running crazy on them, you have to applaud what he's done. And we're in a season where nobody has just stood out as just dominant from week in and week out. And yes, Dillon Gabriel, best player on the best team. But at the same time, I've never been of that opinion. I believe that the best player in college football, the person who's been the most dominant, should be there. And that's probably Cam Scatterboo over there at Arizona State, if we're really being honest.
Wow, Joey, go ahead. That's a sizzling hot take. Even Sparky enjoys that.
I don't disagree with the Scatterboo love. That guy is a football player. Like, that is the type of guy you want on your team. I think it's Ashton Jeanty. I do. I think that and granted, 190 yards a game is a lot, but if he averages 190 yards a game for the rest of the season, he breaks the NCAA all-time rushing single season. I mean, that is a historic thing. Now, I know that Barry Sanders played fewer games and all the records essentially go out the window.
In a real conference. Yes,
fine. Okay. But he's amazing. So I think that Dillon Gabriel has been tremendous. I don't think he has been so outstanding that he warrants, like, that's the guy. I think he deserves to be in the room. I think that Hunter is... I think that George is pretty spot on with all this. I would probably vote for Jeanty if I had a vote.
Okay.
I'm gonna demonstrate just how unbiased I can be. Miami Hurricane fan, we all know. I think one of the worst Heisman Trophy winners ever, Gino Torretta. It's a complete joke. Dude threw 19 touchdown passes. He wasn't even the best player in his huddle. He was probably the 15th best player on the team. He won the Heisman because he was the quarterback on an undefeated team. Then they played Bama and got smoked. So I never bought into the best player, best team. I think that's ridiculous. Dillon Gabriel is out. 22 touchdown passes, I'm sorry. If you don't throw at least 35 in this era, you can't even be considered because dudes are throwing 40 to 50 sometimes, right? So the best quarterback candidate by far is Cam Ward of Miami because his defense stinks, unlike Oregon's, and he's had to carry them to victories. His numbers are way better than Dillon's. They swap teams. Maybe Dillon has to do that in Miami, et cetera, et cetera. As far as Jeanty goes, same thing with the rankings in the conference. Every really good running back in history could rush for 2,000 in that conference if you give them the carries. It's not that impressive to me.
Nobody can average like 8-9 yards a carry, Aaron. Stop it.
Dude, every great running back ever. Every great running back in college football history was a pretty relatively high draft pick. Those guys are really good players. You stick them in that conference, you're telling me Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson, Marcus Allen, O.J. Simpson, on up to Garrison Hurst, Marshall. I can go on and forever. They all rush for 2,000 in that conference. That conference is not a real conference in terms of comparison to the top conferences. So for me, another thing I hate is there's almost always a damn quarterback. Give me a break with that nonsense. So I love it when a defensive guy rises up like Woodson did, right? If it's best player, if it's truly best player, it can't almost always be a quarterback because they're not always the best player. Sometimes quarterbacks win the Heisman, they're a 7th pick in the draft. Clearly they weren't, or 7th round pick. Clearly they weren't that great. They were just on a great team in a great situation. So for me, we have something unique. We have a guy projected to be a top 5 pick, either as a receiver or a DB, in Travis Hunter. That is unique. We don't see that. He is clearly the best football player in the country. Because I guarantee you, Gabriel and Ward can't go play defense. And I don't think Gentry would be a very good defensive back or linebacker. Whereas this dude in Colorado starts both ways, plays a ridiculous amount of snaps, and can do the same thing in the NFL, although I wouldn't advise against. I would advise against it. Don't try and do that in the NFL. Deion tried that. It wasn't pretty.
All right.
Yeah, it feels like a super, super quick. Aaron's argument, I do kind of agree with it as far as Travis Hunter goes, but it feels like when Ron Dane, when he got the Heisman, it was more of a lifetime achievement award, and that's kind of what it feels like if Travis Hunter gets it.
All right. We'll stick around when we come back. We'll preview the Washington game as we continue to roll along on Talkin Ducks. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. I guess we should eventually preview this game against Washington amidst all the Heisman and playoff talk here. And George, some questions about the Huskies. Who's going to play a quarterback? What do they bring in here? Obviously, it was a year with a step backwards for Washington, but they still have a chance to play spoiler, and you never know what you're going to get if you're dealing with multiple quarterbacks.
Man, there ain't no controversy here. There's nothing that is up in the air if these two guys are healthy. You got Rodgers and you got Damon Williams, who's a true freshman. Every single week, there have been more and more snaps for Damon Williams. First they were runs, now they're passes, now they're letting him run around, and he was the one who saved the game in their last game. So, yes, we know who's starting. And as soon as Softy and the rest of them Washington honks start talking about, I hope coach doesn't say who the starter is going to be. Let him keep guessing. You know who the starter is going to be. That's why they don't want to talk about it, because you know that they're going to let the more dynamic threat play, because they know what's going to happen if you throw Rodgers out there. This is why they benched him, essentially. This is why, and Damon Williams is the future. Let him go out there. Whatever happens, happens, and you got him ready for next year.
All right. Joey, thoughts on a freshman quarterback making the start at Autzen Stadium with the team that's undefeated and wants to close out the season undefeated? And, you know, we've also sometimes been underrated about this Washington defense as well. How do you see the Huskies coming in?
You're telling me you're going to put a freshman against potentially Jordan Birch, DJ Uiagalelei? That could get a little rough in there. I don't know. Like, again, this is one of those games where it's like, I just don't see how this isn't a 24-point win. Like, and we've said this a couple times, but this is not the same Washington team from last year. You know, obviously they lost every single starter. They lost their head coach. This is a team that has been struggling to try and find out who they are, and now they're going into Autzen with Oregon potentially getting healthy. I don't know. Is it just me, or is anybody else worried that they're not more worried about this game? I think that's the thing for me, is I don't know.
Coming off a bye,
Aaron, what do you got?
Oh, once again, you're going against a team that has issues at quarterback. And once again, Oregon's going to defeat that. And the freshman kid, he's going to buy you some time. So there's going to be some plays where nothing's there, or something's there, he just can't read it yet, right? And then he's going to take off and make some plays with his feet, and he might extend a couple drives longer than maybe they could have gone because of that. But it's not going to add up to anything other than it's just going to delay the inevitable, right? There's no way a freshman kid on a mediocre team is walking into Autzen and making that game into something, you know, even remotely trepidatious at all. I think Oregon dominates this game, but I don't think Lanning's going to go overboard. I don't think he's going to try and get some revenge. Like I said, I'm a vindictive person. I would try and go for the throat, leave my starters in till the very last second. Dan is probably wiser than that. I say, 39-17, something like that.
All right, George. We'll get to predictions here soon a little bit, Aaron, but
oh, my bad.
George, is this a must-win for Oregon, though, when you look at the fact that Lanning is 0-3 against Washington? We had the conversation, they're probably in the playoff even if they lose, but for all the reasons outside of just picking up a win and kind of getting that edge back over Washington, is this a must-win?
Yes, this is a must-win, but you can't. But the team's not going to feel that pressure of like, oh, we have to win this game. This is going to be an opponent. Yes, there's going to be some emotion involved, but this is just an opponent that you got to go take care of business. The team is healthy. So you have the three guys that they've practiced. I don't know if we're going to see all of them in action, but they have practiced. And now we're going to find out, now they're trying to ramp up and get ready for the Big Ten championship. And I agree with Aaron that I would probably sweep the leg. I would be out there. If I was Dan at the end of the game, if we were on the goal line, I would give them this. And then to the crowd boos. We go in and go score again. But at the end of the day, when you have had Tez get hurt, you've had Harper be hurt, you've had Jordan Birch be hurt, the more prudent decision is to get up big early and then put your younger guys in the fourth quarter and let them hold down the fort and get some experience as well. But the most important thing is to come out with the win and come out healthy.
And George, real quick, I made this point earlier that yes, they're playing Washington and they lost to Washington 3 times, but Kalen DeBoer's not here. Penix isn't there. So the revenge factor is not the same, right?
Yeah, it's like trying to get revenge. You know how to be talking about in the NFL or in college football. It'll be a team who lost the Super Bowl, and then they'll play them in the regular season. They're like, is this a revenge game? No, you can't get revenge in a regular season for when everything was on the line. There's never any revenge for the Pac-12 championship game last year. They just have the upper hand on that one, and we got to get an upper hand in another area.
All right, sounds good. Well, George, thanks again for joining us, my man. Enjoy the game this weekend. We'll catch up with you soon, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, stick around. We'll give you our predictions for Oregon and Washington as we close up shop on this edition of Talkin Ducks.
Simplest of terms, just what does this rivalry mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. I think college football rivalries are extremely special. You know, I think that's one of the things that make this fun. The excitement that surrounds the fans, the alumni, the people that have been a part of games like this for a long time. It means a lot to us, certainly. But ultimately, it is another game, right? It's the next game. And you don't get out there playing with emotion. It's about execution over emotion. So these games are going to have emotion. That's the way these games are played. But that's not what's going to lead to success on the field.
Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Time now for the Road to Victory, brought to you by Guarantee Chevrolet. And here it is, guys. Oregon-Washington final regular season game of the year. The Huskies coming into Autzen Stadium. Aaron, the Ducks are 19.5-point favorites. Give me your score prediction and who you think or what unit needs to play really well for Oregon in order to make sure this thing isn't even close.
Oh, man. I just said 39-17, so I have them covering. I just don't see much of a threat here, so I'll go with the front seven, just making sure that Washington's young quarterback doesn't make a ton of plays with his legs to sort of create scoring opportunities that wouldn't normally be there. But I just don't see how this is much of a game. Washington's not devoid of talent, right? They could definitely put up a couple touchdowns and get some stops, maybe make it close early. But I think eventually the Ducks just run away with this thing, and it's not going to be that close.
Joey.
I said last week we did predictions, and I think I was 24-14, right? Because Tez had not told the world that he's playing yet. He's the key for me. I mean, he really is. He is the difference between what was the final score? Was it 17-14 at Wisconsin and 16-13?
Too close for comfort.
Yeah, I mean, he is the difference between those close games and blowouts. Because he sustained drives, he moves the chains, and you move the chains, you put more points on the board. This is a 14, 30, man, would you say 30? You said 39-17? Man, I was going to say 38-14 type of game.
Yeah, I got 31-17. I think it's a little bit closer. I don't know if Oregon covers the spread just because I think what George said, you're going to try and get up early. Maybe they lead by 21 at half. At the end of the third quarter, they're up 21. Then later in the game, they put the reserves in. But for the most part, we still need to see Oregon put some big points on the board consistently. That game against Wisconsin, some issues. And I think Dylan Gabriel, it comes down to him and just making sure you protect the football. We've seen some of those red zone interceptions this year. Make sure you don't give anything easy to Washington to give them momentum and especially take points off the board that you're going to score. I think if he plays a consistent game like he has done for the majority of the season, Oregon has no issues. But can Dan Lanning get win number 1 against Washington during his tenure at Oregon? It would help Oregon finish with an undefeated regular season for just the second time in program history and set up a huge matchup in the Big Ten championship game. We will have that game covered for you next week on the next edition of Talkin Ducks. Enjoy the matchup against the Huskies, and we'll see you then.